Hey,
Hi,
how are you?
not bad. Great to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. Really nice.
We got there in the end.
I know. I'm really sorry about yesterday, buddy. I hate doing that.
No stress. The last couple that we've recorded actually have been Wi-Fi issues, and it's just I think with the lockdown, I think so many people are online all the time and etc. etc. So it's cool, but we got there.
Yeah, we got there, man. It's really cool.
We got there. Look, first thing I'll say is thank you so much for doing this. I'm super excited about this one actually. It should be really
You
really
say that to
interesting
all
for
your
me.
guests.
But
Yeah, you're
do you know
sweet talker.
my my wife chins me about this all the time. But this is what's so good about doing this. I get to invite people on that I've got a genuine interest in and want to chat with. So it's
Awesome.
brilliant. It's brilliant.
Thank you, mate. Well,
So,
thanks for inviting me, and respect where respect's due. Thanks to Mr. Gell as well for linking it up. He's a great lad. He's a world champion. He's his seventh dan, like 12 times world champion.
yeah, I've lost count how many world titles he has at this stage, but it's he's one of the people, and I don't know how long this list is, but he's one of the people in martial arts who I really respect.
Yeah,
Their opinion on the majority of things. He's a top top martial artist. So and a
he is.
great time now as well.
I said to him, I have a real lot of respect for this guy, like genuine, like heartfelt respect for him as a person and for his talent. I said to him, he came. I don't know if you know, but he came on a course with me, and I taught him
Yes.
for a year.
Yeah.
And I was watching him operate, and we have a lot of different level people come on my course. We have some people like him who are world champions, and we have some beginners.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at him operate, the way he moves, he can put a kick literally anywhere on anybody at any given time in any place. The guy's incredible. He works on another dimension, doesn't he? It's like he's not just doing his techniques. He's like working in 3 or 4D. You know, he can spot the moves where the openings before they open. You know, you're smiling. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, my head
And
knows what you're talking about as well.
yeah, man. I think I said to him, no joke. I said to him, I think, like I've been around quite a lot, Kareem, and I said to him, I think that you are the best kicker I have ever seen in my life.
Wow.
And I've worked and lived in China for 10 or 12 years. I was in Korea for a couple of years. You know, I know the cookie one in Korea. I'm not a Korean martial artist,
Yep.
but I've spent time up there, and I know some of the guys up there, the instructors and stuff. And I'm telling you, that lad from Scotland is off the scale.
Yeah, I fully agree. Fully agree. Yeah, he's and do you know he is what all. Mate, this is something I want to get to with you actually later on in the chat. But he is what all real martial artists should be, and that is just an even better person than what he is a martial artist or in martial arts. He's an absolute gem. He really is. He really is. So yeah, he was actually. I need to get him back on this podcast actually because he was on in our very first couple of episodes where it was just recorded. We didn't actually have like a video edition of it. It used to just be at the very beginning on Apple and on Podbean and stuff. But I'll need to get him. I'll need to get him back on because he's a star. So he is. Right, I've got a list of stuff here that I want to chat to you about today.
All right.
And as I
We've
say,
got the same watch as well.
Absolutely.
Look at that.
If this list will probably go off in a number of tangents as the conversations always do, but you're probably one of the best known martial artists in the UK at least. And people can source your information, so and all the stuff that you've done previously, and I want to cover that too. But I've got maybe some different wee questions for you today that you might hopefully find interesting too.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah. So having said that, let's actually start at the basics now. As I say, people can Google you, and the information that's out there on all the stuff that you've achieved and done so far is there. But can you give us just let's start from the basics and give us a wee introduction to how you got involved in martial arts, even just for my audience, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So I got involved as a kid. I had a few aunties that were involved in the kung fu scene when I was in the early 70s. they're out there doing Lao Gar when I was like a little, like 6 months old, a year old, or whatever.
Yep.
And they'd take me around the competition circuit when they were out there fighting. They were doing it for, quite a high level, to be honest, in the 70s. And so, I grew up with hearing stories of my aunties, and spending time with them and hanging out with them and stuff. And I remember particularly one story. One of my aunties said she was walking through the Bullring shopping centre in Birmingham, right? And it was a different place in the 70s and 80s. Birmingham was, as you probably know.
Yep.
It's a bit more gentrified now. And three skinheads sort of surrounded her, and she knocked two of them out before they could move. And I remember just thinking, wow, that's really cool, man. And I had these visualizations of what happened. And I think she took me around there one of the days and showed me it was like here, on the way down to the train station down there. And I was like, yeah, and so that was kind of my introduction to it from an early stage. I had a very positive, like, image of what kung fu was, and I didn't really take to it like as a young boy, sort of like 5-6 years old. I was just like any other kid, really wanted to ride my bicycle and that. And one of my other uncles has got a boxing school, and he's or two of them have boxed, and they run a boxing club and stuff. So did a bit of boxing with them, and it was like, yeah, this is okay. And then I guess, I don't know, it must have been about 11 or 12. I had kind of quite a traumatic experience, and I really felt, I won't go into details, but I genuinely thought I was going to be killed, right? Okay. And in quite an unpleasant way. And it scared me, man. It really scared me, like, to realise my own mortality at such a young age. Mm-hmm. And a couple of my mates said to me, "Oh, look, why don't you come down the Kung Fu Club? There's a Kung Fu Club local to us." And I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And they dragged me down anyway one Wednesday night. I remember, I'll never forget it. Like, my memory's dreadful, but I've got this like really profound memory of walking into this Kung Fu Club. And I can see it now, like, 35, 40 years later. And there was just these people doing these movements. And there was this guy, and he had a blue shiny sash on and a black suit. And he was doing this form, and he was concentrating and kicking. And then they were fighting and sparring, and they were, and that was it. They had me, and that was it. They had my soul, and then I gave my life to following that. That's what I wanted, man.
Yeah.
That was it. It was good.
I want to get to China quite quickly in the conversation, because that, having sort of read up and heard you do interviews and stuff in the past, is a really interesting thing to me. But, and again, it's entirely up to yourself and whatever you're comfortable with, what areas of the story you want to tell, I guess. But am I right in saying that you moved in or lived with a Chinese family before you went to China to actually stay? What age was that at?
I guess like, home life wasn't great for me, so I guess I was probably 14 probably, in Birmingham. And so I basically got took under the wing of a Chinese family, and ended up living and working with them probably until about the age of 17, something like that, when I went off to Hong Kong.
You say that so matter-of-factly. Do you know, that's one of the things that people in the podcast have said, these extraordinary things that people do. And I always find it quite amusing just how matter-of-factly people express themselves sometimes. 17-year-olds don't just go off to Hong Kong. They go to the cinema, or it's like, I was 17 and I just went off to Hong Kong. Would you say that's where the Chris Crudelli story kind of really starts then? As in,
no, it's probably just before that. I think, like, so I'd been doing kung fu for a while, and I'd been taken in by a Chinese family, and they were martial artists, and so my study at that point, it's like it came off the script, if you like. Actors talk about, like, getting something alive. They've got a script on paper. Before that, my kung fu was on paper. It wasn't real.
Yep.
And I'd done the forms, I'd learned, I'd been diligent, I was training 6 days a week and all the rest of it, but it hadn't been put into practice. And the guy who I was very, very close with, just because of the various businesses that he ran, we ended up getting into a lot of trouble. And he was very practical. He was like, "You've got to make this work," And for me, that it changed my perspective on kung fu.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't something that was intellectual. It wasn't something that was in a dream in my mind. It was something that people are going to try and hit you with a hammer. So what do?
Yep.
Because it can be, you can't be fancy, you can't be beautiful. Combat is actually a very, very brutal thing. And for me, I learned at that age that kung fu was basically it's a gentle direction. So your natural movement is to lift up your hand, isn't it? Whatever. If someone swings something at you, you lift up your hand. It's totally natural. And kung fu isn't about having the perfect twist and it's not. It's about getting that hand up just slightly better than you would if you weren't trained. Yeah. Getting your body in a position where you can hit just slightly better than if you weren't trained. So it wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about efficacy. I think that's the first thing. And I think I'm so glad I took that lesson with me out to Hong Kong, because it changed my perspective on all of the learning that I do. Sorry, I'm just going to shut.
That's fine.
Shut that down. Apologies. All right. So we're good. So yeah. So I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned was that everything comes down to somebody trying to hit you with a hammer or a cleaver, and that if you do your train, you can have the most beautiful forms and training, but you've got to find in every single movement what is the purpose and how do you apply it. Because if you don't, in my view, that's not kung fu.
I'm so glad you said that, actually, and this is my first sort of tangent going off. I speak to my own students about that quite often, and I always like chatting with someone like you who has the same message. I still like to really keep that white belt mentality and always see myself as an explorer, I guess. And again, talking about Mr. Gale, he's got the exact same attitude, and we're always trying to be the student and get better. And one of the things I don't like to do with my students is lie, and this can be quite common in martial arts, but I pass that message on all the time. You might train in martial arts for 10 or 15 years. It's not going to make you look like a movie star. It might allow you to get your hand up just in time. And it's that split second of a difference that might get you out of something safe or not. Just because you've got a fifth dan or ninth dan, whatever, you're not going to, it doesn't happen in slow motion. So it's really, really positive for me and really interesting to hear you say, and someone like you to say, this is what we're training for. It's just getting that hand up a split second before the impact. Sorry, I interrupted you there, which
no, mate, don't be silly. No. Don't be silly, not at all. It's fascinating to hear your insights as well. And, you're absolutely right. And I think anybody who has, they've been in the game for long enough and maybe outside the game as well, and kind of, they've seen a bit of life, yep. Will tell you the same thing. They'll tell you the same thing. And I think if they're not telling you the same thing, then I'd question it, a little bit, because it ain't movies, it's gritty and it's horrible.
Yeah. So how does this get to Hong Kong? How does this get to Hong Kong?
So do you want to talk about Hong Kong?
Yeah, I mean, it's as I say, making that decision that then lasts 10 to 12 years is a huge part of. I think it's a huge part, an interesting part of the story. Okay,
what do you want to know? I'm an open book.
Yeah, I want to know why and how a 17-year-old makes that decision, and one of the things that, one of the things that I want to talk about, and again, you'll know about this, is China. I think, and it might be listen, I always say to guests as well, stop me straight away, and I'm open to be wrong about things. I've never been to China, but something I'm aware of is this. Sometimes there's West. I don't like to use the word propaganda. You might tell me I'm right or I'm wrong. I want to talk to somebody like you that has spent a considerable number of years in China, and I think, having not been there, it's a fascinating place. I think it gets a bad rep. I might be wrong, or I might be looking in the wrong places, but I want to talk to somebody like you who's lived there, trained there, experienced Chinese life for over a decade, and to actually put a message out there that's positive about a place like China.
Well, China's an incredible place, and you're absolutely right. It gets a horrific rep, absolutely horrific. There is an awful lot of anti-China propaganda, and in the Western media. Now, I'm not saying it's a perfect place. Yeah. Every place in the world has its own problems, but to think that we don't have those problems here, and to hide and to deny some of the stuff that actually goes on here behind the scenes is, quite frankly, ignorant and dangerous. So we're talking about China, and we're talking about the anti-China propaganda that is sown and peddled really by politicians here, and it's put in the press and lobbyists and all the rest of it. Yes, bad things go on. They go on all over the world. Guess what? They go on in your doorstep, right? But it is it is unfair. It is excessive. Stories are exaggerated without the ability of them to come back and say, well, hang on a minute, what about this, or this? Yeah. And I think that I think the reason for this, we all know now, China over the last 20 years has risen very quickly. It's an economic powerhouse, and I think it terrifies the West, quite frankly. I think we're terrified of it here. You know, there's going to be a transition to worldwide power is going to be from China and not the West. And when the West isn't in control of everything, and we don't have everybody, quite frankly, suppressed, or we have someone who could genuinely be a threat to our way of life and our control and domination over the world, then I think that's a scary place for people who are in control to be, and they don't like it, and so we have to keep shoving it down people's throats how bad it is over there. There's bad things that go on. There's injustices, terrible injustices, but guess what? the amount of injustice that goes on here, mate, is off the scale. But we're not allowed to talk about it because we're perfect and we're great and we have the best justice system and we have the most integrated citizens and we have civilized world, and really no. It's like they kind of blind you to what's going on here, and you're not allowed to speak out about it because you'll be ostracized and you're whatever. So I just think we should, it would be great if we could have more of a global view, more of a incorporated view, and just say, well, what's the problem? It's great, look at it for the pluses and the negatives and say, well, you could improve here, but this is great as well. Just like a more holistic view of the place would be great. They're not demons, man. They're not devils. They're not terrible people. They do some bad things. Guess what? So do we, every single day.
So tell us about your time there and your experiences, the actual day-to-day living, the martial arts, your full. Well, if you can take 10 and 12 years and bring it together to tell us some something about
that. Such a big question. I mean, I love the place. I think it's fantastic. I have such a great experience there. I love the people. I love the food. I love the culture. I love the language. I speak Chinese, and I love the cultural references. I love the way about looking at things from a completely different perspective. China developed in isolation. It wasn't like some European nations where we share linguistically. We share a lot of commonalities with other countries like Latin, French, German, and stuff. You've got In China, you've got the deserts in the north, and you've got the mountains in the west. You've got the seaboard on the east. So it really did. It was a culture that really developed over thousands of years in complete isolation. So the language, the thinking process, the fighting arts, everything really developed in a really unique way. And for me personally, I just really enjoy, being able to step into another world and look at things from a completely different angle. Um, yeah.
So if we can concentrate a little on what your martial arts journey was like over that time, I would imagine. I mean, if you go to a country, take from my sort of Taekwondo perspective, if you go to Korea for 1 year, your martial arts are going to be, I would think, completely different to when you left.
Oh yeah.
But if you're there for over a decade, it must have been quite an extraordinary difference between the 17-year-old Kung Fu exponent to who came back.
Yeah, very different. Like my first experience was, I suppose, the biggest and most profound experience. First of all, I was exposed to Buddhist thought. So I came across a monk when I was over there, and he told me a story. I said to him, "What are you wearing these clothes for? What is all this? I've seen you guys in films. What's it all about?" Yeah. And he said to me, he said, because the thinking informs the movements, doesn't it? Right. So he said to me, "Well, Buddhism is like," he said, "it's like a leaf falling from a tree." He goes, "The leaf comes down and it falls down." He goes, "Well, it gets blown by the wind left and right on its way down." He says, "You are the leaf. You're getting blown by the winds of life, by emotions, feelings, desires, hungers, all these things that move in you left and right." He said, "Buddhism is the practice of trying to make the leaf fall in a straight line, so it's not affected by the winds of life." And I was like, wow, that's really profound. I don't quite understand. But I thought about it, and then I'm like, oh, right, that makes sense. So, cut a long story short, I ended up like really getting into the philosophy side of it, and like studying Buddhism, converting to Buddhism, and for a while training to be a monk. In fact, so for me, going there, the most profound thing probably was the real like putting together of the mind and the body. So it wasn't just the body; it was also the thought processes. So understanding that. You can call Buddhism a religion. Some people do, but it's more of a philosophy, really. Understanding like the philosophy that goes together, and the philosophy is what shaped and gave birth to the martial art, really. So for me, that was probably the most profound, immediate thing. Was that these things go together, and it's real, and it's there, and it's immediate. And then the training schedule, of course, was different. I'd be at my master's school at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And we'd be training or performing all day long. It was a wonderful lifestyle and a wonderful experience. Everyone crammed into the back of a big truck, open back truck. Like 30 of us would go off somewhere and go like perform a lion dance, just like traditional things that Kung Fu schools would do to generate funds to keep the school afloat. And then we'd train for, and then be there making medicines for the people who come in with broken bones and stuff. It changed from like a hobby to like a way to defend myself, and then to this, it became a lifestyle.
Yeah. I've only had a very limited experience with Kung Fu, and it was with Shifu Shi Yanzi, who I believe came over again. This was many years ago. I think he came over from China and opened a school in London.
Yep.
And he done a 2-day seminar in Glasgow that we were lucky enough to be invited to as Korean Taekwondo practitioner type things, and we just went in with a completely open mind. And this, when you're talking about the time that you started, I remember, or one of the things I'll never forget was and again, you're talking about guys that have trained for 20 years, and I remember him asking how long some of the senior grades had trained, and they would say 15 years, 20 years, and then he said, and how often do you train? And they said, oh, twice a week type thing. And okay, a Monday and a Thursday. And how many hours do you train? Well, 2 hours. And he was very respectful, but really humorous as well about it. And he said, so you've kind of trained about 3 months then, when
yeah,
when you add it all together.
yeah,
And again, I'm sort of over 30 years now, apparently, but I'm not really, because for about 20 of those years it was like 4 hours a week, maybe.
yeah.
So what is that? What was needed, do you think, to that must have played an important part in you transitioning from this is a hobby to self-defense to what you are now, I guess. And I think what we're all
definitely.
trying to be. How did you get introduced to the Shaolin Temple?
So, well, north and south. So I've been and trained in both. So initially with the north, I think the first time I went out there was when I went to university. So I went to university in China.
Right.
And I did a degree in Chinese language and literature. And I was studying in Beijing. And then one of the holidays, I don't know, I was 19, something like that, I think, when I went to the Shaolin. So I went up to the Shaolin Temple in the north and spent some time up there training and just spending some time really sniffing around. And it was, I have to say, it was like a really disappointing experience for me.
Okay.
To be honest, I know that's not very a popular thing to say, but just being completely honest.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, man. I mean, the thing is, I was like 90. So when is this? Like 20 odd years ago. I'd heard of this place, and this is before the internet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you don't know nothing, right? And you heard of this place, and it's like you've been training this kung fu all these years. Finally, you make the pilgrimage to the Shaolin Temple. You go there and you do some training, and you go speak to the monks. And I remember I went to this one. This is probably a really bad example. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll tell you.
Remember, you're not just telling me.
I know, mate. I know. Well, here's the thing. This is honest. I mean, it's like it's the honesty. So I went there, and I was praying in one of the temples, and there's a monk behind the counter, and he was like, "Oh, chatting to me. How you doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, good." And because I could speak Chinese by that time, and chatting away, blah blah blah. And he said, "Oh, why don't you make a donation?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was a poor student, but I had a couple of dollars with me.
Yep.
And I put I don't know what it was, like a $5 donation in there or something. And he saw my wallet when I opened, and he goes, "What about that 20? Can you put that 20 in?" And I was like,
"Yep,
yeah, okay." That was my dinner for the next week. You know what I mean? I was like, "Yeah, okay." I was like, "Right." So I went to put the 20 in. He took it off me and he put it behind the donation box.
Right. Okay. Yeah. What's the difference between North and the South? Because again, I'm coming here as someone with very little knowledge and certainly no experience of that. But when you mentioned the North and the South, can you explain that? Because my really amateur understanding is that one has kept more to the traditional way and one hasn't, or I might be way off there.
I think so. I mean, you've got to remember, and just to finish off that story as well, there's good and bad everywhere. So I'm not saying everyone's bad, but I'm saying there's good and bad everywhere, right? So that was my first experience. Very disappointing. The main difference, I suppose, could be summed up like this: if you look at kung fu and martial arts as historically over the last 100 years, right? Wushu has become very popular. Wushu is a very dynamic, beautiful, performance-based art. And then you've got traditional kung fu, which has become less popular, but it's more common in the south. China's huge, right? It's like the size of Europe. Massive, massive, right? So in the south, you've got more traditional-based arts, and in the north, there's much more of a drive and a push politically to promote what's called Wushu, right? Yeah. So in the northern temple, there's a lot of Wushu training going on, which is more performance based. There is pockets of like real traditional kung fu as well.
Yep.
In the south, in the southern temple, in my view, it's more it's a bit more gritty. It's a bit more, yeah, it's a bit more practical. It's a bit more gritty. It's a bit more, in my view, like old school. There's less perhaps wushu influence there, overt wushu influence. It's smaller. You know, you can just come and go as you please. There's hardly any tourists. You know, it's a much more personal, old school place. I like it. That's, you know, that's where I go to spend time. And yeah, I'm a big fan of this. My background, Karim, is like southern based kung fu, so it's much more short range, close range.
Yep.
So that's probably why I'm more, you know, more attracted to that side of it.
Yep. And you take students now on trips each
Yeah,
year?
yeah. So I've done a couple of pilgrimages to the Southern Temple, and we've gone over there and trained. And you know, I was probably lucky enough to be one of the first Westerners to be able to teach there. I taught there, and I've got the I say the keys to the place. It sounds a bit arrogant, but they you know, the martial monks there and the abbot sort of gave me an introduction ceremony to the temple, and sort of you know, inducted me into the sort of temple there, and they let me take foreign students and to live alongside the monks. And I think we're the only people that's allowed to do that. We can train and live inside the inner courtyard. No women, no. Women are not allowed to. We had some girls on the course who were like really peed off.
Okay.
We were like, I'm so sorry. You have to live in the hotel down the road, but you come and train in the day.
Yep.
But you can't live alongside us and the monks in their quarters.
Yep.
So I think we're the first school to do that. So it's a great honour for them to give that to me. So yeah, it's just an incredibly peaceful and beautiful place. In the north, it's overrun with tourists. It's like Disneyland, you know. It's just, there's literally hundreds of thousands of people there every day. It's a huge money making enterprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the south, it's a quiet little setup in a village. You know, it's an old school temple.
Okay, here's one of the big questions, and what do I mean by that? I mean it's one of these ones that I discuss often, and having someone like you on the show today, very interested to hear your opinion on this. And again, another thing that I discuss often with my own students, what's the difference between someone who does martial arts and a martial artist? When does one progress and wake up one morning as a martial artist, as opposed to someone who just does martial arts? Or is that not important at all, maybe? I think it is, but I'm really interested in your opinion on that one.
It's a good question. When does somebody become a martial artist as opposed to someone who does martial arts? I think it's a question of what's in your heart, isn't it?
Okay.
You know, yeah. I think it's hard to define it by the amount of hours or days you put in. I think that's one very good way of doing it. Very clear. I think what's in your heart. Do you love what you do? Does it shape your decision making?
Yep.
Right. And I think that's when you can call yourself a martial artist. It doesn't matter how good or bad you are, probably. I would say probably, you know, are you conducting yourself right in life? Has this thing touched your heart so that you can change other people's lives as well? You can kick higher than me. Doesn't mean you're a better martial artist than me, because it's more than high kicking or hard hitting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's probably the answer. Is it in your heart, and are you telling people what you're doing, or are you actually doing something that's useful and profound?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess that's it.
I think when you said there about influencing your everyday decisions, I think you get to a stage where you don't actually realise until you go back and analyse maybe your thinking that it actually has done. There's so much that you, even just problem solving or anything at all really, I bring it back to Taekwondo or martial arts in general, to be honest, more often than I even realise. And I think when the country was locked down during the March time, I think it was,
Yeah.
it didn't affect me as much as I thought it was, and it didn't affect me, and I wasn't thinking about it selfishly, or I wasn't actually necessarily worried about it. And when I went back and thought about that a couple of days later, I thought to myself, the martial arts have played a part in that. The fact that things come and go, and there's only what I can control is what I can control, and it's one of the moments where I thought, maybe you've moved on a wee bit here, Kareem, and you haven't actually realised it. Yeah, I mean,
that's a good point.
I think the point you make as well about, I've seen so many people over the years that are whose technique is impeccable, and they can kick it sort of 12 o'clock, as we would say, and etc. etc. And again, this is me being judgmental, which might not be a sign of a good martial artist, but thinking, I don't know if how are you treating people? How are you, I don't know. So that's why it always sticks in my head. It's always a question that I'm always trying to investigate myself to see, what does it actually mean to be a martial artist as opposed to someone who just does martial arts? I don't know.
It's a good point that you raise, because it's martial arts are physical moves. Ultimately, they start off with physical moves. So like you say, kick at 12 o'clock or hit somebody this way or that way. I think there's a profound journey that a martial artist goes on. And I think the journey starts with finding his confidence in his ability to use big words like defeat his enemy. Let's say, confrontation, right?
Yeah.
The first thing you learn is how to defend yourself physically.
Yeah.
Once you've been doing that for a while, your mind starts changing, and you no longer have the same degree of fear of confrontation. And so you should be able to find a voice. You find your own voice, so you can speak truthfully, more truthfully, because you're less afraid. Because day in, day out, for years or decades, you practice the art of not being defeated, right?
Yeah.
And that has an effect on the mind. It makes the mind more able to speak freely without like constant fear of judgment, like what's he going to say, what's he going to do, like, because in the back of your mind, when we start off, we're all little timid things. We're scared of everything, scared of our own shadows, scared of other people's, what they're going to do, and in the back of your mind, you think, not even consciously, oh, that bloke's going to fucking smack me, sorry, he's going to hit me, he's going to,
that's all right, you let it go.
Beep. I beep that one out. Right, you just constantly, it's in the back of your mind, what that bloke's going to get out of the car and whack me, that person's going to do that, I've got to be polite because, right, there's a consequence, right? When you become good at stopping people harming you physically, after, like I say, months, years, decades, you find a voice inside, right? And that voice inside says, I can just speak more freely, more naturally. I don't have to fear this, that, or the other. And that goes two ways, right? You either become a bully and, frankly, an arsehole, bleep that out,
yep.
Right? Who's an ego maniac and just wants to keep feeding that perception of being strong and in power. Or you become kind, like a parent should be. And you recognize other people's fragility and other people's sensitivity as you would your own child. Dad, I don't know, are you a dad?
Yeah, I've got a wee boy, yeah.
All right, awesome. So, when you got your children, you just love them and you're profoundly protective of them. So you either become, you go one way or the other, don't you? You either become a bully and a dick, but I think that's short-lived, or you become like more loving towards everybody.
Yep.
So, and I think that answers the question of like, are you a martial artist or not? because yeah, you can kick, yeah, you can beat people up, but you know, what are you doing for humanity, really? What's your legacy going to be when you die? Like, that guy beat up 20 blokes. He was really hard, horrible, horrible person. But you know what? He could kill and stab. Well, anyone can kill and stab and shoot. And like, really, what are you doing for other humans to help them live more easy and happy and more in touch, profound life? What you're doing, not what you're saying, what you're doing. So, yeah, I think that's really important as a martial artist. And I think that martial arts has this wonderful ability, and it's a gift. It's a profound gift that it can help us find our own voice. And with the right philosophical instruction as well alongside it, and I'm not saying you've got to convert to any religion, but just the right guidance, if you follow that, you know, it will lead you in the right direction, I think.
I think I'm going to contradict myself here, because just yesterday, or a year ago, I was in America grading for my 6th degree in Taekwondo. And in our style of Taekwondo, that brings the rank of master, which hasn't sat with me well at all. And yesterday I had one of these memories came up on Facebook, and the reason, you'll see why this might be contradictory in a second. When I was putting a little post up on Facebook, I'd said, "Oh, it was a year today that I was in Hawaii. I was actually in Hawaii, testing for masters, and it still sticks with me." Now, this is where the contradiction comes in, and people who know me, and my own students and friends and family, they know that this is how I think. I think, and again, I'd love your opinion on this. People start martial arts, specifically adults, not really having any interest in belts or grades, and they just want to try it out. So they're not interested in belts when they come in, and then things start to motor, and they do become interested in belts. And then I think you get to a stage where I hope that I might be getting to. I don't know your grade. It's never even came up in conversation. And now I don't care about belts anymore. And I think I don't care about belts anymore. And I hate saying that in case it makes students feel a wee bit less motivated, because I want to keep them motivated as well. But now that I don't worry at all about what belt I've got or what belt the next guy has, it gives my mind a chance to explore becoming a better person. Just that you've told us, how can I make this person's life better, etc., etc. And the martial arts kind of opens up to you when you get rid of that. You're not tied to that all the time. Am I making sense there at all? Or?
Yeah, complete sense. It's a profound journey that we all go through, the one that you just described. And I've taught a lot of people, and I've seen people go through that same profound journey, whether they've been doing it 10, 15 years or whether they've been doing it 40 years. I've got a couple of guys that I train, and they've been teaching they've been doing it for 40 years, right? They're master's level, you know. And in fact, I had a conversation with one of them just 6 months ago about exactly the same thing that you're talking about. So let me break down that journey a little bit for you from my perspective. Journey that you're going through.
Yep.
Right? As a teacher, from a teacher's perspective, that's the first thing you talked about. From a teacher's perspective, you're like, well, hang on, I'm kind of getting past this now. It's like getting accolades and grades and coloured belts and all the rest of it. But at the same time, if I do that, I'm being dishonest to my students, because it's like I've got to tell them it's important. Well, here's the thing, right? A uniform is good to have, but it's not important. A belt is good to have, but it's not important. A certificate is good to have, but it's not important. None of these things are important. They're not important. But when we first get involved, these things give us structure, and they give us a learning path. In Chinese, they say, in Kung Fu sort of, sayings, they say, learn everything, then forget everything. So you learn, and there's a methodology for learning to get you ahead. Otherwise, the whole thing falls apart, right?
Yeah.
But then once you've learned everything, then you forget everything. So you forget the structure and then you become free. Now, part of your process is becoming free of the structure that you were given. So you want to work outside the bounds now. And that's what every master should do. You've got to get beyond it, but you've also got to recognize at the same time, you've got to have dualistic thinking. You've got to see both sides of the argument, right? You've got to say, well, the students need that, and I support that, and I'm going to do that because that's how they have achievable benchmarks. So in the system that I'm teaching as well, I've been through the same thing. I have two systems that I'm teaching now, Kung Fu 36, Tai Chi 24. There's 24 1-month blocks. From my perspective as a master, I'm like, well, I don't need to do that. But from my perspective as somebody who wants to teach people in a really good structured way that they can learn, there's 24 blocks for them to get through.
Yeah.
Or 36 blocks in Kung Fu, you know. Once they're through that, they've got a good education in that art. So, for example, let me tell you a quick story again. This might make sense to you from your perspective. Look, I had this professor at university who was a professor of Chinese, and he was like just profoundly intelligent and just a profoundly like amazing linguist, right? And you know, these guys had doctorates from Harvard and Princeton and Cambridge and Oxford and all this. And the thing is, so he became an expert by getting his GCSEs, his A levels, his degree, his MA, his PhD, his professorship. But that was just a structured way to get him to that point. Had he stopped there, he wouldn't be as amazing as he was. He carried on his own research in his own way. But he had the tools. He had the tools. He knew how to read. He knew how to write. He knew how to elicit good information. He knew how his brain worked well. He had all in the same way that you've got your first dan, your second, your third. You got to sixth dan. You've become the professor, and you're like, right, where do I take this now? What do I want to specialize in? So you've got all your basic training out of the way, and then you can actually be free in the art.
Yep.
Because if when I first went to study Chinese, my professor said to me, right, here you go, here's a document which is like PhD level, blah blah blah. Read that. I'd be like, what the hell? And I'd be demotivated, and I'd be kicking myself. I can't do that.
Yep.
But because you start at the basics and you build it up, and there's a structure, but eventually you get to the place where you can make that leap. You can jump out of the nest and fly like a bird with wings that work anywhere you want to go.
Spot on, spot on. I'm so glad that question was in my head to explore with you. You mentioned the programs that you're running at the moment, which I want to chat to you about as well. I've got one other big question, if you'll allow, before we get to that.
Of course, don't be polite. Yeah.
And again, you kind of touched on it a little bit, and it reminded me, and it actually reminded me of Mr. Gale in a conversation we've had. And I disagreed with him. And then the more we've talked about it over the years, the more I think I've agreed. Now, I won't tell you what way we've fallen, because I would love just your opinion. Can martial arts change your character, or does it just enhance or show one's character? An example is the bully, as you were mentioning. So if we take a really nasty guy who's a bully, and we teach him martial arts for 10 years, aren't we just giving a really nasty bully lots of different dangerous skills to hurt people? As I say, I won't say which way my previous discussions have fallen, but can it change you, or does it just enhance what you already have?
Well, I mean, if we teach, look, people are easily influenced, aren't they? We're easily influenced by leaders. We're easily influenced by our mentors, right? If our mentors teach us the right way, philosophically, how to behave, how to live your life, then we have a good chance of developing in the right way. if our mentors teach us to harm others, and they're egotistical, and they, even if you can perceive it, you can sense it in them, right? You follow them, you learn from them, and you're just harming people. And by that I mean you're just defeating others. That's the be all and end all, because they haven't developed enough themselves and gone into that way. Then we'll be led down that path. My teacher said, "You stand by red, you become red. You stand by black, you become black." Right? By a flag, like a, you know. So you influenced by the way around you. Power. I think what you're really talking about is the acquisition of personal power. The acquisition of person. If you can knock down 3 blokes that are bigger than you, right, in quick succession, effectively, you have personal power, right? To a degree, you've got personal power, and you can either become a dick, right?
Yep.
Or you can say to those three same blokes, let's change this conversation. I'll give you a quick example, right? I was shooting for the BBC. I did a lot of film work, in my career, and I was filming for the BBC in Nepal. And cut a long story short, it was Gurkha week there. It was pretty rough. I was in a snooker hall playing with some of the crew, and this one fella pulled out a knife over a silly incident with a guy that I was working with. And I went over to intervene to just have a chat with this guy. And he turned his attention to me, like quite a full-on way. Yeah. And we were in Kathmandu. It was rough, and it was a rough week where we were. And I just remember having this really profound experience of I just felt like a profound kind of love and empathy towards this guy that was like rattling off in my face, and I didn't know him from Adam. And he potentially could have been a danger. He was certainly appearing to be aggressive and a danger. I wasn't stupid about it. I didn't stand there like that. Stab me in the heart. I was sensible about the way I spoke to him. But I said to him, I just said to him, and he spoke English. I said to him, "Listen, mate. You know what? We could get into a knife fight here, and you could kill me or I could kill you. It could go really badly." I said, "Or we could just have a drink and be mates."
Yeah.
We could just have a drink, and it could be that easy. And this guy, this tension just dropped from his face. And I ended up having a few drinks. He's like, "All right, okay, we'll have a drink. I'm going to buy you." We had a little drink, we had a chat, and it turned out, poor lad, he'd failed in what he wanted to do with his career, and his love of his life had gone off with a Westerner, and he was just out to self-destruct.
Yeah.
Yep. Lovely man. He was having a meltdown, and he didn't know what to do. I'm not saying it always goes like that, but I'm just saying you have a choice, to play the Hollywood stereotype and kick ass and maybe get cut up or hurt or whatever it is in the process. But at least or just to profoundly try and understand, and love your enemy. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy, and me, I get it wrong a lot, but it can give us that ability not to be the arsehole.
Yeah. One of the other areas that I meditate on, for want of a better word, is ego. And again, I don't know. That's probably why I'm still thinking on it. I don't know. Some people will say that not me personally, but when they're talking about themselves, I don't have an ego. I think everybody has an ego. And I think there's a really negative connotation around having an ego as well. Where does ego sit with martial arts? Do we all have one? Do we need one? Is it always a bad thing?
I can only speak from Chinese martial arts experience, and in Chinese, it's really helpful. Again, like learning other languages and other perspectives. For me, on that subject, it's like a profound one in it for a martial artist.
Yep.
It helped me to look at the word in Chinese. Ziwo, ziwo is ego, right? The word ziwo, and if you break down those characters, zi is like just, but like singularly, and war is me. So to look at it, and Chinese are like these hieroglyphic pictorial representations of concepts,
yep.
right? It's not like a phonetic. So just like, what does ego mean? You're right. There's all these negative connotations. Like, or just me. Okay. So wait. First of all, let's unpick what the ego is. So it's the perspective of just me in Chinese. So it's my perspective versus your perspective. Therefore, we're in conflict.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And when you question me, my perspective, or just me, I have to defend. How dare you? This is mine. What? Just me. This is just me. You're hurting my bubble. I've got to fight with you, or conflict with you, or argue with you, or disagree with you, and I rise my anger. So, is there a way for us to step out of that limited, dualistic, like, trap, really?
Mm-hmm.
And there is, isn't there? We can say, I step out of that bubble of just me, and like, what's going on in his shoes from his perspective, right? What's he thinking? Why is he saying that? And so that's the first thing. That's the first level of understanding and working with the ego, so that we don't have conflict and we can be more understanding. And then the other thing I think is really interesting. Just a couple of like little like gems that I've had from my masters. It's like one of them said, when you point the finger at somebody, there's three pointing back at you.
Yep.
So whenever you're blaming somebody, it's probably there's actually three reasons you're doing that about yourself. And then another one was, and if you look into that, that's really profound, man, because when someone's blaming you for something, it's usually because they feel they've done something wrong themselves. And another one is like the idea of a mirror. So people, like when you have a disagreement with somebody, like on an egotistical level, right? A personal disagreement with somebody, you don't like something, actually that person is a mirror. The thing that you don't like and disagree is the thing that you're afraid of seeing in yourself.
Yeah.
So it's a lesson when you disagree with somebody. I hate you for doing that. I hate you for thinking that. I hate you for the, it's a lesson for us. We can look at them and say, actually, that person is a mirror of me.
Yep.
Right. So I think martial arts gives us these gems of understanding if we follow the right teacher who lives it, not just says it, and we can really profoundly like work on ourselves and make ourselves better human beings, right? Yeah. And we have the confidence to do that. We've found a voice. We're not scared. We're not timid anymore. We're physically and mentally more robust. We have more health, hopefully, and we have a way to live our life in a more peaceful and profound way.
It brings us back to what is a martial artist again, doesn't it? It brings us, you get to a stage where, see, I've got a habit of havering, and you're inspiring all these wee thoughts to be firing off in my head, I guess. There's a stage where the punching and the kicking and the grabbing and the throwing falls lower and lower down the pecking order, I guess, you look at my Grandmaster, for example, turned 80 this year. So Grandmaster Hiel Cho is in America at the moment, and in October, he turned 80 years of age. Now, what that man can do physically at 80 is still extraordinary. However, he can't do what he could do at 40.
Yeah.
That's life. We can't fight against that. But the martial artist that he has continued to be for the last, you look at people when they're 60, they're walking down the street, they've got a stick, they're bent over, the back's sore, etc., etc. Meanwhile, he's still jumping and spinning and sitting in the splits and doing all of this stuff. But eventually the physical side erodes, and he has still been developing as a martial artist right up until 80 years of age. So it's all the things that aren't necessarily physical that might make us better or make us into martial artists, caring for people, looking at our egos, looking at the three fingers pointing back and saying, I think this might be me actually, after a wee bit of thought and meditation on that. It's it all mixes in. It's so interesting to me. Right, let's talk about the actual projects that you've got going on at the moment, and maybe even some of the stuff that you've been sort of particularly. I think you're one of these martial artists that, through the work you've done with the BBC as well, you've moved over to to be in other people's minds, not just martial artists. One of the clips I was watching was you were on, which chat show were you on the other night? And I was watching it. You were on with, help me out. It was on the BBC. You were on one of the chat shows.
Who was the host? That's what
I'm just taking a mind blank on now.
What did he look like?
Grey hair, glasses.
Oh, Grady.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Grady.
Yeah, you were on the Paul O'Grady show a couple of times, I think.
Yeah, I've been on there a few times. Yeah, he's a good guy. I like him a lot.
Which, as a martial artist, is an extraordinary thing. It's brilliant that you're not an actor or a singer or a politician or whatever. So
I should be with these looks, though, shouldn't I?
I hear you. It's the beard. I've said this a couple of times on the podcast. It's the beard. So to be there and being able to share martial arts with that wider audience is brilliant. So let's talk about these brilliant projects and courses and things.
Right. Oh, okay. So I suppose the main thing that I'm doing at the moment is I'm still cutting a documentary that I made in China. It was a 10-part travel series. It's a really personal journey about it's a personal journey about why I love China. And I was a kid. Just a quick summary of that. Like when I was a kid, like what really inspired me, I was down my local library, pulled out an old book, and it had these huge pictures of China, and it was like, wow, deserts and like, men with wispy beards and smoking long weird pipes and like oxes in fields and misty mountains and temples. And so I made a documentary basically like about the journey that I took in my mind when I read that book. And so I physically like played out that journey in China. So I made that. So we're cutting that at the moment with a great editor on that. And that's like one of the first projects that I've directed a couple of projects now, but that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of. So we've got that in the wings, and I've been teaching since this COVID happened.
Yeah.
I moved online, teaching online, and listen, mate. People have been telling me for 10 years, Chris, right? Your show went to 180 countries. There's 1 billion viewers worldwide. This before the internet was even big, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they're like, go online, teach online. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not never teaching online. No. And my ego, basically it was like me thinking, well, this is what you've got to, you don't do that old school. You have a school and they come to you and they train, and people would come like Mr. Gell, for example, they train 8 hours and they come to me, come down from Scotland, drive 8 hours, train 8 hours on the Saturday, train 8 hours on the Sunday, and drive home and work on the Monday. So it just, it was quite an intense program and way of teaching that I was doing. And then my students, a couple of them, I noticed when this COVID thing happened, like you mentioned yourself, Kim, you said like you noticed it wasn't that bad for you personally.
Yeah.
Right? You're kind of like you've got some mental strength. A couple of my students faltered, and I could just sense the fear in them. And so I said, right, okay, how are we going to get through this? So I started teaching them online 3 times a week. I gave them a challenge to do every day. I set up a group chat. I was on there every single day. And I noticed that support had a really profound effect on them. And I was like, actually, after a couple of months, I kind of worked out how to use those televisual skills. I worked at the BBC, worked at Discovery, I filmed in Africa, I filmed in South America, filmed in, America, Canada, all over the world, really. A lot of the shows that I've done haven't come out in the UK. They're over in the States or in other countries.
Yeah.
Worked in China a lot, as you know. And I was like, oh, right, actually, if you learn a new language, a new way of teaching. So I did that essentially for my students, right? You know that if you taught online, it's everything's in reverse. You break it down much more simply, right? Because you're not physically there to whack them with a stick and poke them, and right.
Yep.
So so basically, I started teaching online, and I was like, oh, actually, I kind of got over myself and my kind of old school ways. I was like, yeah, actually, this does work,
Yep.
And I noticed my guys were becoming more really, it was working. It was working. So they've got a lot better at what they do. They've got physically stronger. They've got better at their martial arts from the way I was training. So I was like, okay, I was wrong. This does work. And so to cut a long story short, basically I put 2 programs together. So I teach Tai Chi and Kung Fu now.
Yep.
And I put a program together. It's called Tai Chi 24. So it's 24 1-month blocks to getting the whole form of Tai Chi down. Mm-hmm. And in Tai Chi 24, and there's a website, tai-chi24.club.
Yep,
right?
Yep.
There's a website that we put together, and we're taking, like, my guys. I started off with my guys who are instructors. I've been training them, and I put them in so they can go out and instruct people, so they can have their own classes. Because I can only take 20 people really in a class. But Tai Chi is so profound; it's so good for you. And these guys are good. So I said, right, you go out there and you start teaching. So they've done this, and they're just, this is the business that we're working on at the moment. And I did the same with the Kung Fu. So 36 1-month blocks, and it's kungfu36.com.
Yep.
Thanks for that. Yeah. So those sites, we're still working on them, but they went live today. And we're looking to expand that as like in a franchise sort of framework, like a ethical franchise.
Yep.
And we're looking to teach people, or people who have got some martial arts experience or Tai Chi experience. They want to come under our umbrella. They'll come on a 24-month program with me. We can put them out there teaching. They'll go through my syllabus and through my program, and they'll go out there and they'll teach in an ethical way, a high quality product that is literally changing people's lives. Same with the Kung Fu. We're taking instructors as well now. We're putting them on a 3-year support training package, and they're going out there and they're teaching. And it's, the product that they're delivering is really good. It's really affordable. It's life-changing stuff. So I would say to your audience, if there are people out there who want to come and learn with us,
yeah, for sure,
come have a look at our website. Get in touch with me. We're very available. Some of the instructors are on there. We're putting their profiles up today. And if there's instructors who want to come and join our organisation, or they want to become Tai Chi instructors, come. We'll have a look at you, and we'll help you to achieve that. I really think that I think it's a way forward. I think life has changed since this COVID thing has happened, and I think we're more willing and able to train online now.
Yeah.
And I think I'm pretty confident we got the right blend with this training method for the students, and it seems to be, it just seems to be really working. So very happy with that.
I think you said something spot on again there about we need to, and again, it's maybe about development and where we are in our own journey, but getting over ourselves. There must have been so many instructors. I started after the lockdown just doing Facebook Lives, and I couldn't see who was there, but they were watching me. And one of my students said to me quite funnily, "You're sort of knocking your pan in, teaching online. You can't see anybody." He said, "Everybody could be sitting on their couch with a packet of crisps."
Yeah.
And then another one of my students said, "Listen, Zoom, you have to use Zoom."
Yep.
And as soon as I could see my students again, what a difference it made. And the feedback we've had, you also mentioned about you have to break things down. A lot of students have come back and said, "Do you know what? I'm actually picking this up maybe better because it's in smaller chunks. You're taking, let's say we were doing line work drills, maybe in class it's all systems go, online, let's do 4 techniques, do 3 techniques. And people are actually coming back and saying, I'm picking this up better. And I wonder how many instructors just have to not only get over that hurdle, but it's get over themselves to actually try it and embrace it.
Well, we're taught, aren't we? We pick up so many things along the way over the decades of training, and oh, don't do this, don't do that. Behave this way, don't behave that way. But times have changed. That's the fact of the matter. Times have changed, and martial arts changed so many times historically. I don't know if you know, I wrote a book, basically, an encyclopedia about 12 years ago, and I researched 300 different arts for this book, and and I came across this really profound change in martial arts, and it was with the advent of gunpowder in the 1600s, when gunpowder started spreading. Like, they went from cold weaponry to hot weaponry. So martial arts had to change. And right now, we have the internet. We've never really used it for education. People say, "Oh, I've done maths online. I've done it." No. This is a new world.
Yeah.
This is as profound as the advent of gunpowder. It's going to change the way we teach, and we have to evolve, and we have to be intelligent, and we have to carry on reaching out there and helping people. Because if I sit in my studio, right, saying, "Right, then you've got to come down from Scotland," or we have people flying over from Europe for weekends, and it's like, "Oh, you must be that dedicated." Well, hang on a minute, isn't that just like the way I did it? It don't necessarily mean it's right, does it? We have to change. We have to evolve in order to help people.
We actually had Grandmaster Cho's son teach online to my students from California. We've had a good friend of mine teach from Pittsburgh. I've been doing a 1-to-1 with one of the AMA instructors who stays in New York. It's fantastic. I mean, it's very cool. The opportunities that it's opened up.
It's very cool. Like this type, like teaching Tai Chi now, I've got like people that could never come and train with me. I've got a guy from New York who's training with me. You mentioned New York. I've got a couple of people in California. We've got people in France, Sweden, jumping online and training with us. And how brilliant is that?
That's amazing.
We could never do that before. And I could do that 2 or 3 times a week. And you could see these guys like getting good, over the course of 6 months. We've got one guy who's just off the scale, and he's, over in the States. You could never do that. So there's pluses and minuses with every big upset and change in the world, isn't there?
Yeah.
We just got to be positive and stay on that fatherly side.
Indeed.
Right?
Indeed. Right, let me give a wee shout out just to the websites again. So for the Tai Chi program that you're launching, it went live today, is taichi24.club, and the Kung Fu broken into the 36 sections is kungfu36.com.
You got it.
The 2 new websites. Okay, so I've kept you just about 70 minutes.
It's gone in a blink. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. It always flies in. Someone like yourself with so much experience, I wanted just to pick up some different things today, rather than what can be the standard questions. But
appreciate that.
I'm so glad we eventually got it done. So thank you, Chris, so much.
You're so very, very welcome. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, right. Have a great day.
You too, buddy. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye bye.